Union is a word that's often used within the twin flame community and even in some different spiritual circles. In discussion, it's often confused with reunions for twin flames. Reunions are completely different from union. Reunions serve to teach us or show us things to help us grow on our journey. It's my belief that you can experience reunions at any time, but I think that they're not likely to occur during bridging or balancing, which is when you've recognized the major imbalances within and start opening more and more to the guidance of your higher self. And you're learning what your unique balance feels like with your soul. That's happening during the time of bridging, which is when the feminine intern, or FI, is learning about the oneness they have with their higher self and their masculine intern, or the MI. And the MI will experience this too, but it will likely not be as noticeable to the MI until later in the journey because early on, much of their spiritual growth is on a subconscious level. I believe they experience about 80% 3D related growth, or what I usually call physical growth. So their spiritual growth is about 20%. And this is just what my higher self gave me for my dynamic, so it may be different for you. But when they begin experiencing their spiritual growth on a conscious level later in their journey, that's when the MI is drawn to, or as is often said, magnetized to the feminine. Because when the feminine is at a certain level of surrender, which I believe is in an open, trusting relationship with their higher self, the MI begins walking their path alongside of the feminine because, as a shared soul, the FI is like the spiritual conduit for the MI. And I'm not saying that they aren't open to their higher self in their own way, but I feel very strongly that they start acknowledging their feelings. And I don't just mean feelings of spiritual love or emotional love, but feeling their power, maybe putting together some of the things that they experienced along the way that they may not have even associated with their counterpart. But they're putting all of that together. They're feeling this oneness because they're getting into that balance of ego and intuition, heart and brain, conscious and subconscious, upper and lower chakras, and so on. Once you've been maintaining balance and surrender as a continual part of your everyday life, trusting in your guidance, having a spiritually built relationship with your higher self, which is through your divine energy, I believe that pre-unions happen from that point on and are actually the opening to your union. And I'd like to mention that for twin flames, I don't agree with how some people say union is spiritual union with your higher self and that it's not about your twin, that they may or may not show up depending on divine planning. That's union if you don't share your soul with another person. And it may be one of those things that if you're not experiencing this as a shared soul, then you may not be able to understand it. My higher self has given me that knowledge of how that works between both bodies. And when I first started this journey, I couldn't wrap my mind around it, but gradually through ascension, I've learned and I'm still learning. But that's been part of my guidance. Now, I do believe we can have spiritual union with our higher self, but as two bodies, one of the reasons why we're guided to be aware of and learn how to balance is because we're two bodies, two physical energetic fields coming into balance with the soul frequency. They are part of the soul frequency because the bodies were designed for the soul, which circles back to both bodies aligning. So after we've been practicing balancing, we're loving ourselves as we are, we're following our guidance, we begin to experience those pre-unions. And at the start of our journey, it's like we have an old house that gets torn down and everything gets cleared out that's no longer useful. And your foundation gets put in place and you start building upon that foundation. And you know it's going to be so much better than it was before, even though the changes might seem kind of scary at first. You know you have to let some things go. But then after the restructure, you've got new windows through which to view the world, a new security system, all the inspections are completed and everything's good to go. Then comes the really fun part. You get to go in and paint the walls and decorate like you want. And you start gradually buying new furniture and decor and you feel new. I think that's what pre-unions were like for those who have set boundaries, who are in a consistent state of surrender and self-love. At this point in your journey, both are opening to union. And while I believe union can be different for everyone, I do believe that it's something both people feel comfortable in. I think that there's acknowledgement from both counterparts of the deeply profound bond they share. And that doesn't mean that it has some sort of label on it or that there's any knowledge of twin flames or even a spiritual journey. But I do believe there is mutual respect, open communication, and trust. And I believe union reflects our divine energy experienced at soul recognition and our journey, especially in the way that we've built trust with our higher self through our journey. Ultimately, I believe unions are the new standard for relationships as we move towards 5D consciousness. We're our most authentic self in all of our relationships. But it's through our twin flame union that we establish this because that oneness is really standing out to us. Meaning, I don't believe it's just happening for twin flames, that's just one dynamic, but it's part of the vibrational shift in our world. In this, union is represented as mutually shared and unconditionally loving, but it's that way for both. It's not one sided, it's something both have freedom, peace, and love and understanding in. And while I believe that will be acknowledged by both in different ways through all of our chakras, I believe that it will be most evident in our solar plexus chakras and our throat chakras as they come together in the heart chakra.